Before Joseph Stalin became the feared dictator who would reshape the 20th century, before the terror, the purges, and the empire he would command, he lived a life that was almost cinematic in its daring, criminal audacity. In the summer of 1907, the city of Tiflis, in the Russian Empire, bustled with energy. Horses clattered along cobblestone streets, merchants shouted their wares, children played along narrow alleys, and the smell of bread and roasting meat floated through the air. Amidst all this, a young man named Soso, who the world would later know as Stalin, moved silently through the crowd, unnoticed by the busy pedestrians, unnoticed by the soldiers patrolling the streets, unnoticed by anyone who did not know where to look. He was thin, quiet, calculating, and completely focused on a single task, the most audacious bank robbery the empire had ever seen. He was not motivated by greed. He was motivated by revolution. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, needed money, massive amounts of cash to fund their underground operations, to buy weapons, to print newspapers, to finance safehouses across Europe. And Stalin was chosen to carry out this robbery, not because of charisma or charm, but because of his cold, precise mind, his ability to calculate risk, and his utter fearlessness in the face of danger. For weeks, Stalin observed the streets of Tiflis. He memorized guard rotations, studied the patterns of the bank carriage as it moved through the city, noted the placement of street vendors, watched the comings and goings of ordinary citizens. He noticed small details, the exact moment a soldier paused to adjust his hat, the time it took a horse-drawn cart to navigate a corner, the way the sunlight hit the square at mid-morning, casting shadows that could hide a man's approach. He studied the square so meticulously that he could have drawn it blindfolded, knowing exactly where every obstacle, every person, every building was at any given second. Then he assembled his team, selecting only the most fearless and ruthless of his comrades, the men who would follow orders without hesitation. At the center of this team was Kamo, a revolutionary whose courage bordered on madness. Kamo would lead the attack, carrying grenades hidden in what appeared to be simple picnic baskets, blending in with the crowd until the moment of detonation. Stalin himself would not be in the square. He would remain a ghost, a silent observer, orchestrating the chaos from a safe distance, his mind racing through every contingency, every possible outcome, calculating the probability of success or failure as calmly as if he were playing a game of chess. On the morning of June 26, 1907, the city seemed ordinary. Merchants shouted their prices, women bargained for vegetables, children ran along the edges of the square, oblivious to the world's dangers. Soldiers escorted the bank carriage into the crowded square, their polished boots striking the stones in rhythm. Inside the carriage were hundreds of thousands of rubles, cash that could finance revolutions, that could change the course of history. Kamo moved through the crowd like a shadow, a harmless villager carrying a basket. He paused for a heartbeat, lifted the lid slightly, and there it was, a small, deadly grenade. His hand was steady, his breathing controlled. He threw it. Time seemed to stretch. The explosion erupted with violent fury. Smoke filled the square. Horses screamed and toppled. Soldiers were thrown to the ground. Civilians screamed, ducked, and scattered in all directions. The world became a blur of chaos, dust, and fear. And then another explosion followed, echoing through the alleyways, shaking windows, rattling doors, amplifying the sense of panic. In the midst of it all, Kamo charged forward, snatching the heavy money sacks while bullets whizzed past him, weaving through the chaos with a grace that seemed impossible, human, and terrifying all at once. It became a stage of surreal terror. Vendors screamed as their carts toppled, spilling goods into the dust. Children clutched their mothers, crying, unable to understand why the world had erupted into sudden violence. Soldiers fired blindly, their commands drowned out by the smoke, the noise, the explosions. And through it all, the young Stalin remained elsewhere, unseen, calculating. He was thinking of every possible route, every possible obstacle. He was thinking of escape paths, contingency plans, and what would happen if things went wrong. He was thinking several steps ahead of everyone, including the empire's most diligent police force. He felt no fear in that moment, only focus, only calculation, only the thrill of seeing a plan executed with precision and audacity that could only come from a mind like his. Within less than 90 seconds, the attackers vanished. Some leapt onto horses waiting in narrow side streets. Others melted into alleys, climbed onto carts, and disappeared among the crowd. The smoke lingered, the dust settled, and the square was left littered with bodies, toppled carts, and shattered glass. Dozens were dead. Many more were wounded. The Tsar's officials arrived too late, stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened. They launched one of the largest investigations of the period. Troops combed the streets. Guards questioned every passerby. Homes were raided. People who had no connection at all to the robbery were interrogated, but the money was gone, already moved through secret underground channels toward Lenin. Stalin's fingerprints were nowhere to be found. The world would never know that this quiet, thin man named Soso had orchestrated one of the most daring crimes in history. The success of the robbery provided the revolution with exactly what it needed. New printing presses appeared in secret locations. Weapons were distributed to operatives across the empire. Safehouses were funded. Plans that had seemed impossible became feasible. Yet the human cost was staggering. Innocent civilians had died. Even within the Bolshevik movement, some questioned the morality of what had been done. Stalin did not care. He felt no remorse. His mind was already on the next mission, the next step, the next plan. Kamo, who had taken the most visible risks, was later captured, tortured, and had to feign insanity to survive. Stalin, as always, remained a ghost, untouchable, invisible, calculating his rise with cold, unflinching precision. When Lenin learned of the robbery's success, he was impressed. Stalin had demonstrated reliability, intelligence, ruthlessness, and above all, strategic genius. This single violent morning in Tiflis would mark the beginning of Stalin's climb to the center of the Bolshevik movement, a first step in his journey toward absolute power. History would later remember him as a dictator, a tyrant, a man capable of unfathomable cruelty. But in that moment, he was simply a shadow in a crowded square, orchestrating chaos, turning violence into opportunity, and laying the foundation for a future empire. The Tiflis Bank robbery was not merely a crime. It was the birth of a methodical, calculating mind that would one day reshape the world. And it all began with smoke, fire, and a young man named Soso, who would one day become Joseph Stalin.